Hello, everyone. Good evening. Hope everything is going well in the midst of all of the craziness that we are still experiencing this year. And I just want to say that my prayers are out for the state of Texas during this time. It's quite sad what's happening. And I think it should serve as a warning to everyone else to not depend on this government and to, you know, prep and save as much as you can, as much as possible. But anyway, um, so I want to talk about how to elevate low vibrational ancestors, and I'm just going to start with this one tip because it's pretty deep, and I don't want to go on for forever about it. So you hear people talking about when it comes to ancestor veneration, like setting up your altar, you know, having the four elements present. So earth, and earth can include an actual plant. It can include herbs, dried herbs or living herbs. Um, Fire, of course, is your candle. Air is always going to be your incense. Some people use like um, floral sprays and things like that around the altar as well to keep it smelling good. And then, of course, water. Um, you always want to have a glass of water up on your altar, right? Those are the basics. Then you start adding in your other items, you know, be it vices like food, technically is a vice, um, adding in alcohol, tobacco, cigars, things like that. And what you will hear some people say is that you want to either include photos or written, uh, sort of like a written petition or document that states who these items are for. And a lot of people, you will hear them also say, this is for my benevolent ancestors, known and unknown, you know, please accept this offering, da 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 da, right? But oftentimes you hear people say, do not do any sort of communication or give any sort of alimentation to your low vibrational ancestors. And by that, everyone is an ancestor, but that's beyond the fact. But everyone who is deceased deserves veneration of some sort. And by low vibrational, I'm talking about people in your family who may have been mentally abusive, physically abusive, um, verbally abusive, etc., etc. People who may have been drug addicts, people who may have been alcoholics, people who may have been murderers, um, rapists, uh, thieves, all of that stuff. People who are basically in, you know, what we consider to be low lives. People like that you don't want to venerate them because you are allowing them to take in part of your energy. Not only can it influence you, but it can also, you know, feed that spirit and allow it to continue in its vices versus it elevating up to the level of reincarnation to come back and do this all over again, right? Um, so the reason I'm making this video is because there is a way for you to work with those low level, excuse me, let me rewind a little bit. Let me rewind a little bit. This is another thing that I mean by low vibrational, because low vibrational isn't people who just make poor decisions and do bad things or what we consider to be bad. Low vibrational can also be if you had a mentally ill uh, loved one, if you had a mentally ill loved one who died. Um, by mentally ill, I mean like anything from schizophrenia to anxiety to depression, people who commit suicide, especially. Um, those are all low vibrational people who just, oh yeah, also prostitution, also pimping, um, also people who were hypersexual. The reason I'm saying this is because on a spiritual from a spiritual perspective, let me put that right, you kind of want balance. The key of this life is about learning balance, right? Not too much of the good and not too little, right? And not too much of the bad, but not too little. We all need balance. And for those of us who fall on one scale or the other, a lot of people tend to think that if you're hyper spiritual, that that's also good, but it's really not. You are a human being and you're supposed to be living a human experience. All of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? So keeping that idea of everything that falls into a low vibrational category, the way that you work with them is by working with yourself. When you hear certain practitioners saying that you need to practice self-love and that self-love is everything, let me tell you, self-love really is everything. When you, this, 21st version of your ancestors, right? The living version of them, the living version of your mother, whether your mother is living or not, the living version of your grandmother, of your great-grandmother, and her mother, and her mother, and her mother before her. And likewise, the living version of your father, the living version of your grandfather, and your great-grandfather, and his father, and his father, and his father. You are the living version. And any issues, this is why they try to tell you that alcoholism and drug abuse and things like that are hereditary, because you are actively carrying the DNA of those people. And whatever issues those people dealt with, you very well might deal with those same issues during your lifetime, depending on the choices that you choose to make. But self-love, the reason why it is a form of veneration, the reason why it elevates them is because if you do your shadow work, if you dig into the traumas that you experience and then start digging into your parents' traumas and your grandparents' traumas, especially by way of collective traumas, if not anything else, if you start dealing with those things and start healing those things and say, I'm going to love myself no matter what anyone else deems as unworthy or unholy or unrighteous. And I say all these things because a lot of people feel like there is no forgiveness, when the only person that forgiveness needs to come from is you. The only person that decides that whether or not you're worthy is you. It's a misconception that we need to please anything outside of ourselves. And the moment you let that mentality go, that is the key to unlock the door to freedom. Not just for you, freedom for your parents, freedom for your grandparents, freedom for your great-grandparents, and all of those generations before you. Heal these things by loving yourself. And I'm going to get a little personal and just say that when I first started this work, it wasn't easy. When I first started doing shadow work and I was already doing ancestral veneration, let me tell you that I feel like the amount of ancestors that communicate with me has multiplied because of the work that I've done. I don't come from a family of nice people. They do try to, be all religious and cute in church and stuff like that, but my family isn't that nice. There has been jealousy, cheating, lies, abuse, trauma, murder, right within my own family, and not too many generations back. And no one's dealt with it. Every time someone has, we have mean people in my family, right? And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not that nice all the time either. It's like I get in the mood, and that's who I am at that time. My family can be very mean. And it's just like everybody would be like, oh, such and such's father was like that. Our family's not like that. Or that came from them hanging around such and such person. They, hung around the wrong people, and so they started to act that way. Things like that. Like there's always an excuse as to why we are what we are. But me taking the power back, doing that shadow work, seeing that this is the shadow of myself and this is the shadow of everybody that came before me. We just are mean people sometimes. It is what it is. Doesn't mean that we don't do good things for people. Doesn't mean that we're not nice. We're just mean sometimes, okay? And in me doing that, and me saying, this is how I am, right up front, people, I noticed something different. I noticed pride within myself, but I also felt pride for my lineage. I also felt freedom for my lineage to not be held by what society says you should be, which is to be nice all the time, to be good all the time, and all the other kind of stuff. Like, you can totally cut somebody out and still show kindness at the same time, you know what I mean? Like, and I saw that growing up, but I didn't allow that to fit in my mind, just like a bunch of other family members. We didn't allow that to fit in our mind, the fact that you can be both light and dark at the same time and exist within the same vessel and still be the same person. And so I encourage each and every one of you to dig into the shadow, collective shadow, your familial shadow, and the things that don't nobody want to talk about, whether it be, addictive behaviors. I know for a lot of people within our community, obesity is a big one. People overeating, people not treating their bodies well. When did it become an okay thing? You know what I mean? For drug addiction, for alcohol addiction, for sex addiction, because sometimes people are just doing stuff because it's been done before them by those who came before them, and they don't question why they do it themselves. You've got to take the time to question, and you got to examine, and that's how healing comes. And I feel like my relationship with my ancestors is stronger because although I'm aware of a lot of bad things that happen between family members and two family members, especially when it comes down to murder in a particular part of my lineage, not judging those people for what they did. You know what I mean? Especially, I wasn't there, right? But also just understanding that human beings are vast and we change so many times throughout our lifetime. And the person that I knew as my great grandfather or grandmother isn't the person that they were when they were single, before they ever even had kids, or when they might have just had one of those kids at that time. You know what I mean? They're not the same person. And so we have to offer that grace and offer forgiveness and love ourselves harder. Love the fact that bad things happen and love the fact that good things happen. The more we allow for duality, the more human we become, the more human we are, the more we see humanity in others. And then we can extend that same grace and that same forgiveness to other people. And that's why it's necessary to love yourself, to venerate those ancestors who died in their depression, who died in their addictions, who died in their faulty thinking, in their abusiveness, and in their traumas. It's important to love yourself because it extends to them. It's important to extend yourself grace and extend yourself forgiveness because it extends to them. And those souls venerate, and you're going to feel lighter. When those souls are venerated and they're crossing over and they're elevating, you're going to feel lighter. Blessings are going to come your way. It's also a form of blockage, for these spirits to kind of be stuck in the mentality that they're stuck in that particular reality. They need to be elevated. They need to be seen. They need to be loved. And by doing that, the way to do that, is to love yourself first, right? So that's all I want to talk about. Practice self-love, self-care, taking care of yourself, create a regimen, and be kind to yourself. In doing so, you're being kind to your entire bloodline. And remember, the things that you fix, your children will not have to go through. So, love and peace and blessings to each and every one of you. If you like this video, please hit the like button, and please subscribe and share as well. Comment below if you got anything to say about it. But anyway, have a great evening.